I'm from the teach photography in the School of Art at Texas Tech, and I want to welcome you all to this informal conversation between Terri, Allen and Lloyd Maines and the School of Art, and also friends and colleagues from elsewhere. I want to thank a couple people, even though it's informal. There's a lot of people who were involved in helping to organize this. I want to thank the Southwest Collection for providing the opportunity in the first place, and offering to let us use the funding room. I want to especially thank Danny Wilkinson and Curtis Peoples. The School of Art faculty, I want to thank Deborah Milosevic, Future Akins, David Lindsay, Don Granados, and all the graduate students behind the scenes who are helping out. Tony Wise, who's volunteered to do the live streaming. Shalmal Aaron, who's recording. Preston Phillips, who's going to lead our conversation. Carolina Arianos, who is helping record things behind the scenes, and also Amy King. Chris Taylor from the College of Architecture, who helps spread the word. And Terri and Lloyd are familiar with most of us here, but for those of you out there in the audience or the live streaming audience, just a couple of comments. Lloyd is one of the all-around music producer, musician, songwriter, one of the best pedal and steel players around. Terry's both an internationally known artist and musician with artworks in the Metropolitan Museum in Alma, the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, San Francisco, Dallas, some public commissions in LA, San Francisco, DFW, and here in Lubbock, it's both Memorial and here on campus by the student union building. He's produced a dozen albums, including Lubbock and Everything, which he'll perform as a 40th year anniversary reunion with members of the original band Thursday night here in the Allen Theater on campus. And I just want to mention that when I first moved to Lubbock in 1982, Terry's music and artwork helped me to get oriented to being what I thought was a very strange place. But the contradictions, irony, and humor, and the challenges brought into focus by his artworks helped inform my own work as a photographer and some of the projects that I worked on later, including the Estacado project, which is housed here in the Southwest Collection. So anyway, I just want to welcome you all and introduce Preston Phillips, who's a graduate student here in painting and sculpture and also a musician. He's going to lead our discussion.
Hey. So I'm Preston Phillips. I'm a graduate painting and sculpture student here at Texas Tech. And if you don't know who these guys are, it is a great honor to be sitting up here with these men here. So much of what I do comes from the things that they set forth, speaking about the Panhandle and where we come from and how this place exists in the world. There's just so many things I can talk about. My mother is from Turkey, Texas. I'm a boss. My dad's from Canyon. And my grandfather played with the Playboys, and he also his family was a Cobra Club member in Amarillo for several years. And several members of my family paint and sculpt, and so all these things are things ingrained, I feel like, in my life. And growing up on the Frying Pan Ranch, northwest Amarillo, we're surrounded by all kinds of really different, unique, large artworks. I think it's ingrained sort of in the size of the landscape and just the effect of the horizon on us. Working on ranches and growing up doing things with your hands and building things and fixing things and connecting that to the visuals that are around us. And so, I don't know, that's all I really want to say on introduction. I figured I would let you guys sort of pave the way, but maybe the thing that I like to hear about is maybe not even a question, but more of the stories that I like to hear, or the things that you guys talk about in connection with this place, and how you feel like that affects what it is that you do and how it's presented.
Don't laugh at me like that. I'm going to start off because I started recording on 1214 Avenue Q. My brothers and I had a band here for years and years. But my first recording session was at a place called Caldwell Studios at 1214 Avenue Q, right there, pretty much Q and Broadway. And I played, I didn't really produce, but I played guitar and pedal steel and whatever was needed on a bunch of gospel albums. For years there, it seems like a lot of old like farmers from the area would, when they would get in their 50s, they would all decide they wanted to do a gospel album. So I really learned a lot about recording and that stuff for doing these records. And then in about 1977, a guy named Paul Milosevic, who a lot of you might know Paul, called me at home and said, I've got a friend named Terri Allen, and he graduated from Monterey, went to Tech for a while, lives in Fresno now, teaches at Fresno State, and he's ready to do a second record. And he said he's got a bunch of songs together about Lubbock and growing up in Lubbock and the High Plains and the whole Panhandle area. And I'd never heard of Terri at all at that point. Paul told me that he had a song recorded by Little Feat and by Bobby Bear and a couple of other bands. And so I was totally unfamiliar with him. And I said, heck yeah, it sounds interesting. So we called a meeting. Terri came into town, walked into Caldwell's, and from the time he walked in the door, I knew that I was not dealing with a normal individual. and I mean that in a good way. He walked in, because, I'd always heard artists are like, not organized. They're like free spirit. They just come in and let things happen. Well, I tell you, Terri, he is a great artist, but he's one of the most organized guys. And still, Andy Wilson would be another one. He really has his stuff together. Yeah, because you're done. Because he walked in with a big leather binder of all his songs, totally typed out, had copies for the musicians, and he knew exactly what his vision was for this record. He needed a little help kind of forming the arrangements, but basically he had them together, and it's like it changed my life at that point, because I'd never heard lyrics like that. I'd never heard songs. There were Delbert McClinton, I'm sure you know who that is. I saw him a few years after the record was released at a Willie picnic, and Delbert was sitting back on a bench, and I walked over and started talking to him. He's from Lubbock until he was in the 5th grade. And he said, you worked on that Terri Allen Lubbock on Everything, right? I said, yeah. He said, Delbert said, that is the most poignant record I've ever heard in my life. And I just had taken it for granted, because I'd worked on it for so long and kind of lived and breathed this record for so long, that it made me stop and realize what effect it had on other people. And anyway, that's all I've got to say. Since then, we've been around the world together and done many shows, and have done probably 8 or 9 more records. And so I feel extremely lucky to have been kind of thrown into that. Until I worked with an artist, I didn't really know I was an artist. But after working with him, it's like I felt like that I was kind of part of the art world a bit. And we've done so many cool gigs since then. And so, thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you. Yeah, it was a strange journey for me, because being raised here and then getting out of here as fast as I could, pretty much like as soon as I got a driver's license, and going to California. And then I lived in California and went through a number of lives. But I put together these songs, and I cut an album called Juarez in 1974, and it was pretty much a solo album. There were a couple of musicians, but I hadn't really worked with any musicians. everything, all my writing, pretty much all of the playing I've done was solo by myself. And I was always uncomfortable playing with musicians, kind of just because I hadn't done it that much. So I jam with people, but I never felt really comfortable about it. And I had these songs that I'd written over the years, and I didn't really think of them as being Lubbock songs. I just thought of them as songs, and I put them kind of in an order. I knew some of them dealt with this part of the country, but I didn't think of them as being any kind of label of what kind of song they were or where they were from. I've always been real interested in space, and just endless kind of space. I always thought that space, there's a lot of space in my songs. And I know one of the things I've always thought about is that I think the same space that's in this part of the country is in the songs that come out of the music that comes out of this part of the country. And it's different from, say, East Texas, where there's a lot of trees and stuff in front of you, and so people see, they have to look around and stuff. Here, you're always going to that endless flat. And I think the imagination goes to that edge all of the time. But I think that's in the music that comes out of this place. Just like I think there's the way people speak, there's a flatness in it, kind of endless quality to the dialect. And I think it's the same, like in other parts of Texas, people have dialects that are reflective of their geography. So anyway, when I came here, Paul Milosevic called and said, there's a lot of great musicians in Lubbock this summer. Ely was living here and playing a lot and had an incredible band. Lloyd was in the band and was working at Caldwell Studios. And I called Don and told him I wanted to cut about 20-something songs, and would he work a deal with me, which he did. And so on a fluke, I got an NEA grant. I didn't kind of right around the same time. And it was a fluke because I didn't really apply for it. I just got this grant. They gave it to me. And so it was kind of like a windfall as far as this record goes. Or the recording goes. So I came to Lubbock, and I think the first night Joe Harvey and my wife got here, we went out to Coldwater, and Ely was playing, and the whole band was playing, and that was the first time I ever met Joe, first time I ever met Lloyd, Jesse, Pawnee, the whole bunch, because I went to Monterey, but Joe was a couple of years behind me in school, so I never really knew him. I knew Jimmy Gilmore and Butch Hancock, but never in the context of music. It was just, little shits in school, But anyway, so when I met Lloyd, I remember saying, well, I'm coming. That next day when I went in there. And I sat down and played pretty much in order. I had the songs kind of figured out where the sides were going to be, and played all of the songs. And so Lloyd, said, well, here's what we need to do as far as musicians and whatever. And like I said, all of a sudden I was in this room with these guys that I'd never played music with or whatever, and I'd play a song, everybody would circle around the piano and then go to their instruments, and we'd work out what the song was going to be. And it was like this incredible relief to me because it was the first time I'd really been around other musicians that I felt like I could, I felt totally comfortable with. And so that was pretty, and we did it fast. We did the first tracks really, really fast, and then brought in, did some overdubs and stuff. But the record, it's like, when I think back on recording it, it was like, it was almost like a dream because it went so fast and everything kind of fell in place and it was so comfortable and I became so close to these people, family kind of close, and I think that that was as important to me as any aspect of it, is it meeting all of these people that to this day I play music with and I'm very close to.
One reason I think it worked so smoothly is that once Terri sat down at that piano and we listened to the songs. I don't know if you've ever heard Terri Allen before, but he back in those days it was a grand piano. We had a grand piano in the studio, and when he would play, he would stomp. He had these big snakeskin boots on. He would stomp the sustain pedal just like a kick drum, and it was really prominent. You could hear it vibrate through the entire piano. So like, there was no way that we were going to be able to hide that. It was like, and also I could tell that his foot was set the entire groove for every song, whether it was a slow song or a fast song. And so it occurred to me, instead of trying to have him do something different, instead of like putting a carpet over there and having him stomp the carpet or whatever, instead of doing that, just make that foot stomp part of the music. So
Mic'd it.
yeah. So instead of trying to hide it, we accentuated it by putting a mic on his foot, and so therefore, when you listen to that record, most of that, it sounds like a kick drum, and we did have a drummer with a kick drum, but what you're hearing primarily is his foot stomping that piano, and luckily he didn't stomp the pedal off of it because it sounded like it was coming off several times. But it was like so I think that's why you were so comfortable is because we didn't try to change what he was doing. We didn't try to say, hey, look, you're in the studio now, you need to do it different. We let him do his thing, and we just kind of folded around him and just tried to go with what he was doing. And I don't know how many musicians we have in here, but you've got, when you look at, and I don't read music at all, but I know that on a staff, when you read music, you have simple music, you've got 4 beats and a measure. Sometimes, depending on what the time signature is. With Terri, and he had played solo for so long that sometimes he would, we'd notice that he would mainly be going along doing four beats to a measure. Sometimes he would only do 3 though. Sometimes he'd do 5. And so at one point I tried to call his attention to it. I said, now, when you did that before, you did 4 beats, and now you're doing 5 beats or 3 beats, whatever. And so I would try to at least tell him that because it was kind of stumping the musicians a bit. We'd come in on the wrong downbeat or whatever, and he just stopped. He just stopped and said, "You know what? This is music. It's not math." So actually, we got that, and so now it's like when we play, and we have the same. We use the same drummer and bass player for years. So I promise you, he doesn't lose us at all. It's like we pay so close attention now that we can tell when he's going to zig or zag, and now we've done it so many years. Now it sounds right to us. It sounds totally correct. So anyway, I think that's one reason that he felt so comfortable once he got in there and didn't mind having a bunch of strangers tampering with his music because we went with the flow and it worked.
Yeah, I cut. Been in the studio several times. I'd signed a record deal with a subsidiary of Atlantic Records called Clean Records, and their logo was "Every man should have a clean record." And Delbert and Glenn, that was they also signed on that label. But record never came out of it because I went into the studio and I stomped my foot, and they said, "You can't do that," And then I moved my head, "You can't do that." And by the time I was through with that session, I felt like some kind of carnival freak, And so it was a great relief to, I had always stomped pianos. A lot of it came from when I played and would play in places that they would have a piano that was so bad, that's one of the things when you play a piano, you never kind of know what you're going to face when you go into either a club or really anywhere. You never know what's going to be there. And so I had a collection for a while of pedals that I've broken off of pianos with the dates and the places where that I broke them off. But at Caldwell's, it was great because I could hear it and it was an integral part of the thing. And also it was such a funky kind of situation, like the sound would be really weird, so they'd put up these kind of baffled walls around me and then piles of foam on top of the piano, so it looked like, and so I did a drawing, I remember, and gave it to Don called Caldwell City, the only mountain in Lubbock, and but it's like, I remember also that Caldwell would be on the board, he'd be doing this, but he'd also be holding the head of the tape, trying to keep the tape going against it so it would actually record, and so that became my job, after when we did overdubs.
Yeah, our equipment was pretty antiquated. We had to tie 2 8-track Launchman boards together to make 16 tracks, and then the record button would only, I forget what the deal was, but it wouldn't work properly. So like you had to hold this lever at the same time you punch record. Anyway, it was it made us all have a lot more character and appreciation.
All of us were much more involved in all of the processes.
But if you hear this, if you ever have a chance to hear this record, Lubbock on everything, all Terry's parts are totally live. I mean, we didn't overdub anything because we were just trying to capture his moment. And a lot of times, especially in modern day recording, man, it's like the vocalist, usually overdub everything and maybe take 4 or 5 takes of the vocal, which is totally fine now. But there was no way Terry could do that because he was so locked into that piano and his foot and his voice were all one animal. It's like there was no way to really separate that. So frankly, I love doing stuff like that. It really captures a moment, but you have to have the right artist that it works on. So if you hear that, you'll hear his voice. It's like he is real close to the mic, and then he'll be real back. It was kind of a mixing nightmare, frankly, but it worked. It totally worked.
Yeah, we pretty much cut, I think, every record we've done.
Oh yeah,
cut it live.
Because it's not math.
It's not math.
Well, I have a question. Yeah. This is something I've always wanted to ask you, so I'm just so glad you showed up.
Uh-oh.
Well, there must be a lot of musicians who make art of some kind or another, but not very many of them write about the art world or art or making art. Yeah. So I wondered if you could talk about that a little bit. And you have all kinds of subject matter that other people just don't have in your songs. I stumped you.
No, well, regarding that, like I went to LA to go to art school, and I think in the '60s, because that's when I was in art school from '62 to '66, and everything in LA and everything was busting loose. It was like the war, the whole kind of social structure was changing. Art was really changing because it had gone from like, I think the idea that you had to go buy art supplies at the art store to everything being available. You get at the hardware store, at the dump or whatever. But the whole idea of what making art was about, which seems kind of antiquated now, but then was very exciting, is that you had all of these possibilities when kind of your habits of thinking about making art were picking up a brush and painting or making a drawing or whatever. So the possibilities of busting loose, and also the music that was happening was so, I think it was the most volatile form of expression during that period of time. Music became the real voice, and I think people wanted to participate in that. I certainly did. And the first real band I was in was a blues band called Blackwall Blues Quintet, and we basically did kind of Muddy Waters covers. We did a lot of cover songs instead of blues songs, and we wrote a few of our own things. But I think it was that frustration of just the need to express yourself. That a lot of musicians came out of art school, I think, during that period of time, and to this day, I don't know too many artists that don't play some instrument, even if they just play in their studio or whatever, or have some involvement in music. Certainly, most of them that I know from my generation listen to music when they're working. I always thought it'd be great to do a show of have people choose a work that they made and then choose the song that they was playing kind of when the work was made, so you'd have earphones and look at it or whatever. But there's such a close connection in I don't know if that still exists. I assume it does, but then it was almost like a necessity, I think, for me anyway, to have music, be involved in music as every bit as much as physically making things or whatever. So there was that connection as far as making art goes, and also in L.A. in those days, L.A. was just starting to kind of make some noise in the art world as opposed to New York, and so a truckload of art came out of that. There was also a paranoia among a lot of the artists in L.A. that they were inferior to these New York artists, and so that song kind of addressed that too, that weird paranoia, but yeah, I'm never subject matter. To me, everything's game. If you write songs, if you make art, whatever you become curious about is available for you to make something out of. Yeah.
I was in Tasmania, Australia about 10 years ago, and I had your album with me, and they loved it. And I was with a group of painters, and we were traveling through western Tasmania, one of the most remote spots on the planet. And we played a truckload of art, and they thought that was so perfect for what we were doing, because it was out in the middle of nowhere making art. And they loved the idea of Lubbock on Everything, that album. They liked the other albums too, but what I always appreciated was how Lubbock kind of was the whipping boy for taking the blame, but in a sense, it's sort of like all the contradictions you brought up about human behavior and stuff that exist here are everywhere.
Yeah.
And so in a sense, it's just like an excuse to be able to talk about human behavior. But it does relate to your idea about space, where here it's all kind of clear and you can see it, you can't hide from it, you can't ignore it. It's like it shows up there.
Yeah, I always thought like the space, it's like you're always in the middle of a big circle, so you can become an egomaniac, because you're right in the center of everything, but also you're in the center of a target, so you become paranoid. So it's like you're a paranoid egomaniac, indigenous to this part of the country.
Oh dear, that just drags us all too well. Terry, could you speak on your series, Euthanasia, both the music and the art? Because that was a lot of your work.
Yeah.
Some powerful pieces in there.
Yeah, it was a body of work I did from about 1982 until 91, almost 10 years. And it dealt with the aftermath of the Vietnam War. And I was invited by a German film company, a German director, who had heard my album Juarez and wanted me to write the music for a film that he was making in Thailand about American veterans from Vietnam that were expatriates living in Southeast Asia, mostly in Thailand, mostly in Bangkok. And so he sent me this pretty amazing letter about what he wanted to do with this film and wanted wanted the music, the kind of character he wanted the music to be. And so I told him I'd do it. And I went to Thailand from December and January of 82, 83. And it was an incredible experience because I met all of these vets over there. It was a German film company interviewing Americans in Thailand. So it was like kind of the ultimate displacement stacked on top of displacement. And I worked with a Thai band, a group called Caravan or Carawan. And they were all, had been in the Pathet Lao. They'd been, which was the equivalent of the Viet Cong, except for in Laos. And so they had a band that had been outlawed in Thailand. Outlawed, they couldn't get any airplay. They could do concerts and they could sell CDs or cassettes, not CDs, it's kind of before CDs. But so they had also been hired by this German director to be in the film and do some music for it. But I ended up basically living with these guys for about a month. And we played concerts all over Thailand. We played some concerts at universities where there would be, there was never less than about 30,000 people at these concerts. And so they were kind of a huge grassroots band and kind of an outlaw band. They were almost too strong for the government to really come down on. But one of the things I remember, I would start the show with about 5 songs, and then they would come on and play endlessly. That was an amazing thing to me because sometimes concerts were like 8 hours long, And what they would do is they would play a song, and then they would invite questions from the audience, and the audience would pass things. And sometimes we would be on a series of flat-top buildings, 3 stories up, with the top of every building covered with students, and they would somehow rig something to send these messages. They'd read every message, answer everything, and then they'd play a song once in a while. But it gave you definitely a whole other sense of time, And but I remember I nearly always played New Delhi Freight Train, and it had this unusually reaction from the crowd, this loud reaction. And so I never could quite figure it out. I couldn't speak any Thai, obviously, and they couldn't speak any English. So we played music and drew pictures. That's kind of, and did a lot of pointing. That's how we communicate. But another thing that was funny with this band is like you realize how a lot of musicians, no matter what part of the world there's similar types. Bass players have a certain kind of guitar players, But it's like there was a parallel with these, great friends of mine that were here, and with these guys. But anyway, the New Delhi Freight Train, one of the last gigs we played was in Bangkok, and after it was over and had this big reaction to New Delhi, I asked a journalist, I said, well, why are these people so, excited about this one song? He said, because you're committing treason. And, and I was committing treason because Jesse James, there's a line about Jesse James in the song, was outlawed in Thailand. Just the words themselves, the story, the idea of Jesse James was banned by the government. So the reason I assume because it robbed the rich to give to the poor, and that kind of outlaw revolutionary type. But so I never had any repercussions from the government or anything by it. But anyway, while I was over there, I met a lot of veterans, and I started thinking about the war, and I started thinking about my family and close friends that I had that were either killed or lost 10, 20 years later, just from the experience of being there. And so I started doing this work when I got back that pretty much dealt with the aftermath of that war, and it was the main body of the work dealt with the southwest part of the United States and also Southeast Asia, where the idea that Native Americans crossed over the Bering Strait, became Chinese, or Asians came over and became Indians. Indians went back courtesy of Uncle Sam to visit their homeland, and that kind of circle. But that's what the body of work was about. And it kind of manifested itself in a bunch of installations. I did an album called Amerasia of the songs that I wrote, and I recorded five songs with this Thai band who played American instruments as well as traditional instruments. And I brought as many instruments as I could back to Lubbock and hooked up. We all got together at Caldwell's, and they learned like a lot of these instruments from Laos and Thailand, and we cut the other part of the album here. So half of it was cut in Bangkok with this Thai band, the other half was cut here with Panhandle Mystery Band. And
Terri brought the masters back with him that were done with this Thai band, and what totally blew me away was. And this speaks to the strength of his music in the studio. I expected that we'd get these tapes back, and it would be kind of something that we didn't really understand. But I'm telling you, we put the masters up there. We mixed it all in Lubbock, and put the Thai band up there, and it sounded like a Terri Allen band. The acoustic guitar player sounded like a bluegrasser. It's like I couldn't believe it. He was like playing as if he was in Woody Guthrie's band. So that speaks a lot, because something tells me that those guys kind of molded themselves around what you were doing, which really was fantastic.
But they had learned Western instruments from GIs on leave that were in Bangkok during the war, and who had taught them all of the kind of to play guitar and fiddle and whatever. And they had such an it was as interesting listening to them play for me Western instruments as it was listening to these guys play Thai instruments, because it was kind of perfect with the idea of Amerasia, which was that collision between cultures that the war caused, but especially after the war had caused. So. Wow. Uh, what popped into my head when the last thing that you said was habits. I think that you're always battling your own habits. That doesn't ever end. I think I know when a lot of times when I hit the wall with something, I'll try to put myself in just another place, a place that I've never been. Maybe in my studio, I'll go crawl under something I've never crawled under. I'll go lay on top of something. But literally just physically move to another part of the space I'm in and try to get another vantage point. I know I used to, when I was teaching figure drawing, I would have, a lot of times have people draw everything they couldn't see. In other words, imagine themselves on the other side drawing. So I think it's always kind of forcing yourself against the grain of your own habits. And to me, it's like once you breach that, you get into that mystery area, and that's where work takes place. I don't know if that really addresses your, but and as far as things informing one another, I always think of it as like you've got 5 minimum senses operating all at the same time. You're seeing things, you're touching things, you're hearing things, and whatever. And you don't melt down, and you don't say, okay, today I'm just going to hear, or today I'm just going to touch, or I'm just going to look. You have these things that are all, and to me, music and making things and building things or drawing or whatever is it's the same thing. It's like they all kind of address one another in some kind of way or another. And I'll some for me it's always when I'm doing something visual. A lot of times I'll just out of either tedium or whatever, or just hit the wall, go play the piano, whatever, and then something will happen there, maybe. But a lot of times I'm working on the songs and very visual images and things happen. So that kind of, that's a little superficial, but those things happen, and you build. I think you build off of those. But I've done it for so long, and it's that I've never thought of the two really as separate. You know, to me, it's as much as much energy and need involved in writing a little country waltz as there is doing a sculpture or whatever. It's like the same importance to me.
I remember about 20 years ago you saying something that just struck me that when you started on a project, you had no idea what it was going to be, what medium it was going to be, what genre. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, if you really know what something's going to be, what's the point of doing it? I mean, I think that's the bottom line with that. I think you always want to put yourself in that area of the unknown, and that's where things happen. That's where work, when you come out on the other side here. I've never thought making work was about the artist or about me. I've always thought it's about the thing you're making. It's that's where your focus is, and so a lot of times I think you come out the other side and you have this thing that you've made or whatever, and you see it just like everybody else kind of for the first time, and you're maybe as mystified or amazed by it as anybody else, and that's why it's never bothered me people's interpretation of what you do or whatever. I think that one of the amazing things about making something, put it out there, and having somebody react to it is that they're reacting to it from their point of view, from their personal kind of thing. I mean, they could be a moron, but you know, but it's still interesting, you know. You know, I do. I think it's amazing to have somebody tell you something that they see in a work that you did that you never thought of, you know. And so in that sense, it's, you know, you're a viewer of the thing you do is every bit as much as someone else. And there's different things too. It's like public pieces, which I've done quite a few bronzes and things in the last 15, 16 years. And that's kind of a different thing because I make a lot of drawings for it. I'll get an idea and I kind of work from the drawing and build it and make usually out of clay, and then it goes through that kind of a process. So you kind of do know what you're wanting, but you don't know what it's going to look like really until you're finished with it.
I want to ask a really good question for you. So many of your lyrics have this really strong poetic quality to them. I find that a lot of contemporary music, you strip away the music and the lyrics are left with, there's not much interest in language. Specifically, Lubbock on Everything, just phrases like cracker crunch, you know, and the way you return to that again and again, there seems to be such a pleasure in language. Amarillo Highway, amazing rhymes and just beautifulness with the sort of sonic qualities of the words as they progress through the song. Can you talk a little bit about your play with language and how that's maybe evolved over the years and just what it is that you enjoy about that?
Yeah, songs, they're really a mystery to me. How they come and why they come and where they come. You know, some songs you would come in a minute. Have it in a minute. You know, it's there. And then another song like over that you might be years working on it. You know, kind of how. And I don't know what that line is where you really say that's done, but there is a line there somehow. I think it's I think you try to find a voice for a song, just like a writer would find a voice for it, and then you try to be as true as you possibly can to what that voice is supposed to do or does, you know. And but it's really a mystery. I know I've worked on songs where that I thought I had was really working on 2 songs or 3 songs, and then one day I would put them together and find out I've been writing 1 song all along. You know, sometimes it can be the opposite. You know, you're trying to force something together, and then you separate it, and it's you know, yeah, that's what's going on. But I think you diligently try to make every word count. You know? And I know that one of the things I always loved about Lou Reed's music is I always thought that every word, I don't care how goofy the song was, what it was about, or whatever, but all of his words were true to the idea of the song. You know? And I think that's kind of a way to. I think that's important for me anyway, how you function, how you make a song. But boy, I don't know where they come from, and I don't, you know, I don't. It's a mystery. It's always a mystery. And I don't know why it would be, you know, certain songs. I think they have to do with time. Like I know I've had people say, "Why don't you do Lubbock on Everything again?" You know, and how do you do, you know, why don't you be 5 years old again? You there are things that happen at given times in your life, and you respond to, and then you move on, and then something else happens, and whatever. And I think that's a part of your choices too. Where your choices take place in those time slots for yourself. And I've been fortunate enough to have a lot of different lives, a lot of different places, and a lot of different kind of opportunities that just kind of come out of the ozone. And I think each one of them has its own specific personal kind of world that it gives you and lends you as far as words, as far as images, or whatever. Like there's no way I could do euthanasia now, even though the climate in this country is not very different than it was really in the 60s with that war. There's always a war going on. So.
Terri, could you and Lloyd speak to your friendship? I mean, artists come together.
No way.
Artists come together, collaborate. You guys have had this friendship that has lasted so many years, and family is such an important thing to you, Terri. I know.
Yeah.
And that extends to your closest friends. How have y'all sustained this friendship, and what does the friendship mean to y'all?
I've got 3 younger brothers and a younger sister. I've never had an older brother, and a much older brother. And so from the time he walked in, and I said this in an interview the other day, from the time he walked in the studio and he walked in like gangbuster, like those snakeskin boots and just like totally focused. And he sat down at that piano and just started playing songs that I could relate to every song and just kind of relate. I love his work ethic and the fact that he was a fair guy. I knew I'd found my older brother right there, and we've been through thick and thin together. So
Yeah, actually when I traded, we'd played I think in Houston, or you were playing in Houston or something, but I traded a drawing with some woman for a Cadillac, and it was a 1971 Cadillac, and so I flew to Houston to get this car. We could deliver the drawing, get this car, and Lloyd was there.
we flew together.
Did we?
Yeah.
I don't remember that. But I don't think we played.
Facts, if you want the facts, you come to me.
Anyway, but I remember we went. I got the car, and then that night we went to see Ernest Tubb.
Ernest Tubb, yeah.
And
it was about 6 months before Ernest Tubb. For those of you who don't know Ernest Tubb, he was a great Texan musician, an icon in the country music world. And anyway, we saw him at a little tiny honky tonk, probably about maybe 6 months before he passed away. And it was,
yeah, and we got him to sign our belts.
Yeah,
I remember.
I've never had anybody sign anything. I could really care less about having anybody sign anything, but I wanted Ernest Tubb's signature, so we stood in line until the bitter end.
Yeah, we had that in common because I did too. There were like 2 people that I ever thought about wanting to see, and Ernest Tubb was one, and Kitty Wells was the other one. I never got Kitty Wells to sign my belt, but I'm sorry I didn't. Anyway, we got that Cadillac, and we were going to drive it back to Lubbock, and I remember it's like the first bump we hit, hubcaps came off and were in front of, and we thought, this is a good one, man. But I think that trip kind of solidified. We just started talking about everything, and talking about our lives, and talking about just ideas about music and family and everything. And that was a momentous kind of trip, I think, just as far as our friendship it was for me. And also, I was an only child, so this Maines family just took me in like I was, an old dog. And we'd go to football games and I had never kind of experienced that with so that played into it. And then all of the brothers I feel extremely close to. Well, like the Panhandle Mystery Band became Donnie, Kenny, and Lloyd, but Steve and LaTronda were also, felt very close, and other people in the Maines Brothers. Richard Bowden has become, he's been in every single theater piece my wife and I've ever done. And Lloyd's been in most of them, but Richard's been in every one of them. And so, it all kind of overlaps as time goes by, and it just kind of entrenches with these friendships that are very much family to me. I'm as close to this bunch, feel as close to them as I feel to my own blood. So, and music has a lot to do with that, I think. But just the character too of these humans has a lot to do with it.
So there were a couple back here. Yes, ma'am.
So in this audience, we have a lot of teens who are just beginning their journey in the studio. And so with this just beginning type of adventure, I guess, or journey, what are the words of wisdom that would either of you give, to this group of young people that are just starting out their careers?
You can't learn how to draw Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 9 to 12 or whatever. You can't, or play music or whatever. I think to me, it's never been a career. It was somewhere there's a choice you make about how you're going to live your life. And then whatever else comes, you still got to make a living, you still have to eat, and all of that stuff. But I think somewhere made that decision that that's what, and it was a necessity. And I don't think you can. I don't care what technology you have. I don't think you can teach that. I think that's something that a person has to have. And so I don't know what to say more than that. I really have always thought that making art was not an institutional act. I always thought it was an anti-institutional act. But that's probably from the 60s too, because now with the whole digital world and everything, it's so different than that period of time for me. The way you get information, how people collaborate. I think it's just to me, it's a much different kind of animal, the way people function with one another. And so I don't really know how to answer that question other than just how I feel about it. How I felt about it during that time.
It's been to my curiosity. It's a little bit outside of the topic, but since you're a musician from Lubbock, I've been very interested in the scene of how downtown Lubbock was in terms of music and art. It seems like it used to be a place where it was very, very active, and then now it's a little
I think it's always gone through phases where it's. I know when I came, it was a great time because there were musicians actually that didn't have to have day jobs. They actually made a living playing music, and that's fairly rare. But for about 3 or 4 years, I think, before a lot of people moved to Austin or dispersed, whatever, it was really active here in the music scene. And it seems to me like it has gone. Lloyd can address this better than I can, but it's always been a presence here. It's always been in the undertow of everything. It certainly was for me. I know that this is a little off the subject, but my mother was a really wonderful barrel house piano player, and when rock and roll hit like the atomic bomb, I asked her I wanted to play an instrument, just play something, and the only thing in our house was a piano, and so I asked her to teach me a song, and she kind of reluctantly, because she didn't really like to teach anybody anything, but she taught me how to play the St. Louis blues, just the rudiments of this song. And quite a few years later, I was in LA, and I'd just gotten to LA and was really broke, had no money at all, and I went to a bar that was around the corner, and I had a great fake ID because I wasn't 21 yet. I had a great fake ID from Lubbock, and I walked in the door, and I thought maybe I could get somebody to buy me a beer or a sandwich or something like that, and I walked in, and just as literally walked in the door, it was a piano bar, and this drunk stood up and said, "I'll give anybody here $50 if they can play the goddamn St. Louis blues." It was about the only song I knew. So, little fortuitous things like that.
Thanks for being here, both of you. My question is really about as an artist matures through their career, how do you balance and sustain all of the things that you want to do in your life? With family, music, visual arts, the business of it all. How do you sustain that?
I go to my studio every day. It's just like, I remember Flannery O'Connor wrote a great thing about, like she always went, even when she was at her sickest, she went to her typewriter for at least 3 hours about what she said, even if nothing happened, I want to be there in case something does happen. And I think I've always had that need to go to that space, and even if I don't have any ideas or anything I want to do, sooner or later you start if nothing else, get bored, and you start messing around and whatever. And so I think that for me has been, I kind of have to be a Nazi with myself a little bit. I go out there even if I kind of don't want to, but I pretty much want to. So, but as far as jockeying things, I don't know. You just do things.
And I've been I've been married 45 years, and I've got 4 grandkids, and I've been playing music for my living since I was about 14 years old, and it's like I kind of fought that. I wanted to have, because by the time I was in college, I had seen and experienced pretty much more than I wanted to. It's like, because I played every honky tonk in West Texas, every rodeo dance, every VFW, and I wasn't sick of it so much, but I just, it's like, I wasn't so sure that I wanted that lifestyle. I wanted like a 9 to 5, go home, put my slippers on. It's like although I've never owned any slippers, but I sort of had that vision, kind of because my father-in-law, my wife's dad, that's what he did. He was an insurance salesman, and I kind of wanted to be him because he just seemed really happy and real structured life. So I wanted that, but by the time I was about 22, 23 and started working in the studio, I realized that's what I wanted to do. Forget the 9 to 5 thing. It's like I just wanted to do that, but I've never put my work above my family, and that's probably one reason that's why I've been married 45 years. I've always tried to keep that the top priority, and then luckily I've got a wife that is very tolerant, and she has allowed me to do what I love doing, and I tell her from time to time, like sometimes sleeping is kind of a bother because I look so forward to getting up the next morning and doing what I do. It's like I feel extremely lucky to get to do that, and she values that. She understands that, and so therefore it's worked out great. But does that kind of answer what you're talking about? I want to add something. There was a question over here a while ago about words of wisdom, which I have very few of those. But the one thing that I will say, whether you're an artist, and this has worked for me, and it's something that I also demand. If I'm working with somebody, I'll make mental notes, but be on time. I don't care what you're doing, whether you're attending an art class or going to teach an art class or do a gig. Be on time and do what you say you're going to do. If you tell someone you're going to do something, stick to it. Even if it means if it inconveniences you a bit. If you tell someone that you're going to be somewhere or that you're going to do something for them, do it. And this has worked for me for all these years. And I've worked on. I know this is hard to believe, but I've either produced or played on over 4,000 projects. So it's worth it, and I've done that without having to hire one lawyer. I've never hired a lawyer in my life. Knock on. Is this wood? Yet, but so and I just believe that I'm a total handshake guy. If I make a deal, a handshake is fine with me, and I'm going to keep my end of the deal. I expect you to keep yours, and it's always worked for me. So that's all I've got to say. It's pretty cut and dried nuts and bolts there. Nothing fancy about that. But just believe me, if that works, those little simple items work.
Yeah, and I think that's something. That attitude is something that comes with this part of the country. I mean, talk about the conservatism and all the whatever negatives or whatever you want to talk. But I know being raised here, that idea. I can remember going to the courthouse when I was a little kid, and all these old men were out in front playing checkers and whatever. But they would talk about things like that. They would talk about the old dance with the one that brung you. Just real straight ahead, common kind of values, and I think that you carry that with you. And to me, it came from really being raised here and raised around that kind of a attitude. So, and it's. Totally agree. It's an important thing to haul around with you, I think.
So, if I can have a question here.
Yeah.
So I've noticed that in a lot of the work that you do, artistically and musically, and in what you guys are talking about, it's very relational. Relation to people, relation to landscape and environment. And there's this sort of humor to things. And you talk about it being volatile situations of the day and stuff. But I've noticed that even in my parents' generation, which is y'all's generation, they have that same sort of humor to just everything they do. Like they want to hear things that have these sort of stories and these connections, and they want it to have a lightness to it. My dad's always trying to pitch me song ideas. My reality check balance insufficient fun, or my nose is running money, I'd blow it all on you. That's sort of, he's trying to always interject those things.
That's hee-haw, man.
Yeah. But that's this connection to these characters and these sort of odd, funny events that, at the same time, if you grew up here, you know these people, like you know a Joe Bob, and you know the waitress, or you connect with these sort of follies that these people go through. I know that this sort of thing's changed a lot of artists that are from this area or coming to this area, like George O'Keeffe, very much landscape. Lucy Menace is the people within that. And what y'all are talking about and what y'all do is sort of a combination of the two. What can you say about sort of those connections?
Well, you know, I don't know how you force a sense of humor, but this is a pretty funny place. And actually, if you're a human on this planet, it's a pretty funny situation. And you either recognize that, I suppose, or you don't. It's funny and it's deadly serious and it's all of that. But I think everybody's circumstances. I know, like you talk about Joe Bob or even Truckload of Art. I've got drawers full of clippings that people have sent me over the years of Joe Bob from all over the country. Of that same story of this high school football star who went bad. And Truckload of Art, all of these stories of the truck turning over or whatever, carrying their art or moving or whatever. So I don't know. I don't think you set out to make a song do something like that. It just you write a song about something that you think about. I know I was driving one night outside of Los Banos, California. It was about 2 in the morning, and I was in a pickup, and a guy pulled up beside me, and he had all the lights on the inside of his car, and he had little bandages all over his face. Hundreds of bandages, It's like somebody stabbed him with an ice pick or something in the face, And he was driving along and pulled up right beside me, and he just looked at me and shortly after that, I started writing "Give Me a Ride to Heaven," and I have, but I've always thought about that incident was where that song came from, and so you don't know. I know that I wrote a song called "Peggy Leg" about one-legged woman on the dance floor, but the song actually came from Oklahoma bombing because I saw a couple of doctors had been trapped down with a woman that had her leg was pinned, and they actually had a bottle of whiskey or went down with a bottle of whiskey and a couple of pocket knives, and they cut off her leg and saved her life and pulled her out. And I saw a follow-up story a year or so later, and it was her wedding. She was getting married, and she did her first dance with her new leg and her new husband. And that image, stuck with me, and that's where that song came from. And that actually became, I ended up doing some stuff for the Vietnam Veterans for America Foundation, a landmine, for a landmine-free world. But that became kind of a weird subterranean theme song for landmine victims. And so it's you never know what's going to happen with the song. I think sometimes where it comes from. Sometimes you do, but sometimes a song doesn't really become what it is until after it's written. Maybe 2 or 3 circumstances will make it be what it is. So you never know, what's going to happen with it. Just like anything else, I think a sculpture piece or whatever, or a friend, or whatever, you never know what's going to happen.
I think Terri will agree to this, and this is kind of the way I feel about myself as far as the humor thing and trying to keep things in perspective. Is I take, and I know Terri does too. I take my work, my music, and my music production, very serious, but I don't take myself very serious. It's like and my favorite artists are people who don't take themselves so serious that they're like always scowling or always worried or like life's short, so you gotta have. I mean, laughing releases endorphins, and I think that makes you feel better. And so I'm always searching for something to entertain.
It's
myself
hard
with.
to laugh around Lloyd because he tells the worst jokes. It's more groaning than laughing.
And one thing that I was going to say that Terri and Joe Harvey had this theater piece, and I forget which one this is, but Joe Harvey tells, or I'm not sure which one of you, Joe Harvey is Terry's wife, and they tell this one thing about growing up in Lubbock. It might be dugout, I'm not sure, but they're just kind of in a conversation with themselves, and it's with the audience. And I think Joe Harvey says, growing up in Lubbock, all the time that we grew up here, we were taught that sex is a horrible, vile act that you need to avoid and save it for the one you love. Yeah, when you get married. So that's kind of humor I like.
Yeah, that's kind of the story of West Texas.
So also interested in here, John was asking about your use of language, but I'm interested in how you have an ear for dialects and behaviors, and you quote those things, but sort of turn them around in your work. And I'm just kind of interested in how that got started.
Yeah, I think it's kind of how you get information. Like my way of getting information is to, like, if I'm in a cafe or I'm in an airplane or whatever, I'll listen to what's going on behind me, in front of me, whatever. My wife gets information totally different. Like if she hears somebody in the booth talking about something that's real interesting, she gets up and goes and sits with them and starts, talking to them about it. I would never do that. But I think it is a way, you are kind of, you can't help but be kind of a voyeur if you have any curiosity at all about humans, and so that's, I think, part of it. I think too, it's just a matter of being aware, because if you really watch things, I know one of my favorite things in the world, like if you go to Europe, is just sitting at a table in a sidewalk cafe watching that go by. Same in an airport, just watching people, and then you realize you're one of them, and somebody's watching you too, probably the TSA. But
the other thing too is that that people are curious about you also. So there's that attraction to each other that kind of starts that dialogue, whether it's a visual thing, it's silent, or that it's physical, like they may be closer to you because they're curious about you as well.
Yeah.
It works both ways.
I also like the way that with your work, I always feel like you're telling a really good story that I want to hear. But the point of the story is not just literally the story, it's the thing behind the thing. That there's something else going on. And that's what's really, I never get tired of, because I keep thinking about that again in a new way, and it keeps getting turned around.
Yeah, I think the thing about making work is that it's about the making. It's about the journey. It's not about the end. I remember writing a thing years ago with Juarez when I said, in America, it's the motion that's holy, not the destination. And I'm not sure that's true anymore. I'm not sure destination doesn't take precedence over everything now in kind of our culture, that you have to be there. But I really think that thing of making something, the whole process of it, whether it's a song, whether it's playing music, it's really evident playing music because it's all about the immediacy of playing a song with other people, and when it's over, it's a memory. You know, it's like theater. It's the same thing. One of the great things about theater to me is that there's no souvenir at the end of it other than a memory. You know, and music's the same way. Although even though with music you do have a product, if you record it, maybe you have a CD or whatever. But theater is, you know, even if you film it, it's not. It's, you know, it's really the experience. And to me, all kind of every avenue of making work is about that. It's, you know, that's why you do it. A lot of times I think sometimes you know, you spend years of your life doing this thing that really maybe 2 minutes of you. You're looking for 2 minutes of it. Bam! You know, where the, you know, wow! You know, that's what I was trying to do. You know, but yeah, you know, it's always the making, not the made.
You talked about a little bit about influencers. You mentioned Ernest, of course, and Kenny Wells. Who do y'all listen to today? Who do you like to listen to?
Yeah, I know this is unpopular, but I've got an 11-year-old granddaughter, so I listen to Taylor Swift. And I think she's great. I think she's fantastic and really smart, great artist. But you know, when I'm not I still I listen to Bob Wills. I still love Bob Wills' music because it's like, to me, it's like listening to a great rock band. I mean, Bob Wills always had the best musicians with him, and it was always like this. No song. He never played a song the same way twice. It was always like he would let his fiddle players and his steel player just rip it up. I mean, he had guys that were total, just madmen when it comes to playing. And so I like the fact that it's like every song is an experience. And you know, from Bob Wills to James Taylor, I love James Taylor. I have been lucky enough to get to do some work with him, and so he inspires me just from a guitar standpoint. And man, there's Little Feed. I mean, I love the band Little Feed. I could go on. It's like I have so many influences that I can't even name them all. And I'm sure you do too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like when a question like that, your whole life kind of goes flying in front of you, you know, because you know, I grab this or whatever. But there's so many different types of music. I kind of listen to music a lot of times based on what I'm doing in general at the time. Like if I'm working on some kind of project, I'll kind of find myself gravitating to certain songs or certain kinds of music or whatever. But and that changes. I remember there was an album that David Byrne did called Catherine Wheel years ago. That I was working on a body of work called Anaerobic Bleeder, which was about a hemophiliac. And for some reason, that record I played over and over the entire time I was working on that body of work. And there was no real connection other than there was just something about that music that worked, that, you know, made it conducive to doing what I was doing with this piece. So, but I don't, you know, I like so many different types of music. I think the only music, you know, you don't like music that just overtly, you know, is lying to you, you know, songs that are just bullshit lies, you know, and you know, so you don't listen to those. You try to listen to stuff that makes you think about something in a way you maybe hadn't thought about it before.
Looks like we are
I think you always should get away from where you are. And, I remember somebody asked me once what my definition of art was, and my first thing I said was to get out of town. And I kind of think that's true on a lot of levels, you know. But I think in order to see where you are, a lot of times you have to leave it. You know, it's like that old Tom Waits song. You know, you don't really see it until you come back. You know, because you're only kind of seeing yourself. I think, you know, when it propels you out of there. When you come back, you start seeing what's there. You know, so.
That brings up a question that I have. So I was one of those people that got out, and I didn't really want to. I thought I was going to grow up on the ranch and be a cowboy my whole life. I thought that's what I was going to do. But we moved to Dallas when I was in high school, and this whole new sort of experience. I started playing in like indie rock bands and different soul bands and R&B bands and all these different influences, and moving to Austin and things, and just getting out and about. And when I finally moved back here, there were certain things that became very apparent to me. One that, especially in Lubbock, most everyone that you see here is not from here. And then the people that are from here aren't really from Lubbock, they're from all these little towns out in the Panhandle. But what we do have now is a lot of people coming here to make a start in music, to try and start bands, and to try to get something going, because we have such a big group of musicians that all sort of work together and can sort of play any and everything. And so one of the things that I tried to think about was what does music from here sound like, and where does it come from? It's like my grandparents tell me stories about how Western swing started, where they were all just working in the cotton fields, just picking cotton together, singing songs, and so all these different cultures sort of just mashed up into one, and it created this whole new thing. And Buddy Holly, the same thing. It's like that was the first garage band. There really weren't like 3-piece bands before that. So all this sort of innovation that seems to come out of this small little section of the country, and it sort of is counter to what the current sort of Texas music or country scene is sort of trying to push, as there's this really sort of generic country, like beer selling sort of thing going on, and it's not very innovative, it's not very thought driven, it's not very poetic, and the sound isn't really speaking to the landscape and all this stuff. But I think that push is starting to sort of happen. But what do you think about that sort of sticking to traditions and then creating something new? And what do you feel like our place is in that as artists and musicians?
I mean, I think it's you have your own roots. I mean, you have what you grew up with on the ranch, and so that's instilled in you. I think it's good to like never lose that, never lose the roots, and just expand on that. You know, I mean that's. You know, I was born and raised in Lubbock, so I was too young to know Buddy Holly. My father and my uncles knew Buddy Holly pretty well. They all played music together. I never had a chance to meet Bob Wills, but my brothers and I, when we were just in high school, we would play these dances all around the area. And I remember we were playing in Matador, Texas, in the high school gymnasium. And they had, back in those days, I'm not sure if they still do, but a lot of the gymnasiums had a stage built. Had like a stage for, I guess they held their school meetings there. With a big stage with curtains and everything. So we sat up there and played.
Public executions.
Exactly. and I remember we played on a Friday night. I remember there was a poster on the wall that said Bob Wills Saturday night. So but I mean we took that so much for granted because we were brought up with it. And that's one thing that I regret. I wish that we had had the foresight and the desire back then, because we played Bob Wills songs that night for people to dance to, but we just took it for granted, and I so regret that we didn't make the effort to go back the next night and see Bob Wills live, you know, because I never got to see him live, you know, and I mean, I'm kind of known like when I was playing with Joe Ely and with Terri too. Even though I play pedal steel, I learned to approach it because of all the other influences I had, like kind of like a rock and roll instrument instead of strictly country. And but even though I was kind of known for that, I would blow these people's minds in England or wherever we happened to be playing. I would like be playing along there with Joe, and I would do, you know, because Joe Ely was totally rocking really hard, but I would be playing kind of a slide guitar thing on pedal steel, but then all of a sudden I'd break into solid Bob Wills, and people would just go nuts, you know, just because I was reaching back to what I learned early on, you know. So I think if you can stay with your roots, but don't be afraid to stretch out, you know. And I don't know if that's what you were asking.
Yeah, I think those melodies those chords are so big, and there's so many notes that I think that our ears are developed to hear these just big complex jazz chords moving all around.
Yeah.
And then we have wind chimes which produce insane melodies, and so it feels like this ability to accept different types of music and hear it and understand it is a big common for a lot of people around here, it seems like.
Yeah, and I tell these young musicians, I work with a lot of young, you know, a lot of the Texas guys you're talking about, the upstart guys, and I say, you know, if you're going to get better, on your instrument, don't just play what you know. Play what you don't know. You know, don't be afraid to like stretch out there, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. You know, don't be confined with just with your little world. Like, you know, I listen to McCoy Tyner or like some kind of great piano player, even though you play guitar or fiddle, and then work up some licks that might incorporate something other than what you know. And that's the only way you're going to grow is to learn stuff that you know might not be your cup of tea, but you can learn this stuff and incorporate it in what you do, and that's worked for me. What about you?
Yeah, it worked for me too.
I mean, Terri
Terri
plays a specific piano style that works great, and he stretches out with his lyrics, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty limited piano player.
But I'll tell you this though, I've been in the studio with people who try to emulate what he does because he plays this funky kind of barrel house. What you got from his mom, you know, made $50 playing St. Louis blues. That's the first time I've heard that story. It's great. But Terri plays this thing, and it can't be emulated. I've had people in the studio that will be recording a Terri Allen song, or I'll say, you know, can you do that? Can you make it kind of sound Terri Allen funky? And I'll play on record, and they said, no, I cannot do that. So he's developed his own genre.
Unique ineptitude.
So I'm interested in the fact that you all are here at this institution, and that this is being hosted as part of Lubbock Lights. It's a fantastic thing. And so much of what you're talking about is about sensibility, about identity, about character. The idea that that's hopefully going to rub off or is rubbing off on the institutional identity of Texas Tech is really interesting to me. And I'm curious just to hear your thoughts about a lot of what you're talking about are things beyond the 9 to 5 or beyond this class time. It's about culture, it's about building other sensibilities. And it's interesting to me that this room has people from lots of different places, right? Rather than just one class. And so I'm just curious to hear you talk a little bit about how that sensibility and institutional identity might, if it's interesting to you at all, or these lessons might rub off, you know, you might get a little bit of love at times.
Yeah. Yeah, Joe Harvey and I, we did a guest thing at the University of Houston, where we met with kind of all of it. We met with the theater, art department, music department, and a lot of poets and writers. what they did is they picked about 5 people, I think. These are graduate students from each area, and one instructor kind of from each area. And we set up a thing where that everybody did something they had never done before. Like people that had never written poems, wrote poems, never written songs, never sang. People that had never made a painting or whatever. We went to we took all of the people to the theater area. Many people had never been backstage in the theater, never seen a set shop, didn't have a clue. A lot of the artists that were in the art department didn't have a clue of what incredible art it was to make sets. So it was kind of like a discovery thing for all of these people, but discovering, throwing themselves into something they had never done before. And I think that's, schools can get so locked into their own little world, whether it's painters or artists or agriculture or whatever. And I think it seems to me like an institution is almost an obligation to break that up, where that people learn from one another and people experience one another and people, you have these kind of all this cross references that I think